to sacrifice.
Morning pilots, welcome back to my little segment here on the morning flight. Today I'm coming to you from the Judean wilderness, where Jesus spent his 40 days fasting and praying. This came just after his baptism. And he went out, it says the Holy Spirit drove him out into the desert. And this is where we get our practice of spending 40 days of Lent preparing for the great feast of Easter, the resurrection of Jesus. Well, I had an experience recently I'd like to share with you that helped me to remember what Lent is all about. I went to go see my grandmother, who's 96 years old and really quite sharp, but her body's getting tired and old. So when I walked in at night, she was already in bed, laying there, lights were off, it was dark in the room. And when I walked in, she took one look at me and said, "Darling, why are you growing a stomach?" And I said, "Growing a stomach?" I looked down and I said, "Well, I guess there's a little something there." I went home and I weighed myself. I'd gained 20 pounds. But I thought instantly, well, don't worry. Lent is coming up. I'm going to be fasting. I'm going to be going without certain things. I'm going to give things up. I'm sure I'm going to lose that weight, no problem. But then I thought, wait a minute. Is that really what Lent is about? Is it really about the benefit that I get physically out of it? No, it's not. It's not what I get out of it. It's really what I can give to it, what I can offer during this time. See, Jesus went from his baptism, where he heard the Father speak to him and say, "You are my beloved Son." He went out into the desert, and there he confronted the very things that you and I struggle with. Jesus confronted all of those temptations the devil threw at him, and he was victorious. And he did that for you and for me, that when we struggle in our temptations, his victory can become our victory. He gave of himself in the desert. He fasted for 40 days to have that victory in order to share it with us. These 40 days really can be a time when we experience denying ourselves in small ways. Perhaps we give up something that we really enjoy. People always think of chocolate. Or maybe for some of the adults, it's giving up a drink at night before you go to sleep, or going out with your friends on the weekend, or eating a really nice meal. All of us Catholics are called to give up meat on Fridays during Lent. There's certain things we will deny ourselves, but by doing so, we will open up a space within ourselves that makes room for God to have that victory. And what we can do is then we can practice greater acts of virtue, these stable dispositions in our souls that help us to become the men and women that we were meant to be, that we are meant to be, that God hopes that we will become. We can practice virtue. We can be generous to the poor. We can serve the poor by finding ways to be generous with our time and our money. By denying ourselves, we make space for other people, but ultimately we make space for God. This Lent would be a wonderful time to spend more time in prayer, to take a few moments out each day, and perhaps once a week, a little bit extra time, certainly going to Mass on Sunday, to spend that time with God. He wants to be with you. He wants to experience your life and to be a part of it. This Lent would be a wonderful time to grow in the virtue of perseverance in prayer. Even when we're not getting anything out of prayer, to continue to be faithful to prayer. It's like being in a relationship with a friend. Every day is not a celebration or a party or a great time together, but you always check in. You always spend that time in order to keep the relationship healthy. It's the same with prayer. So brothers and sisters, this Lent, let us not ask what we can get out of Lent, but let's rather offer ourselves, give ourselves during Lent, that we might receive from God and become the men and women we are meant to become. God bless you, and I hope you have a good Lent.
This week, the African American Club held their annual Black Heritage Show.
Here's a sample of highlights from the show.
We Thank you. And now our rapid fire alarms.
On and off, I'm natural enough. Hours wasted in the chair, fried, dyed, and laid to the side. It burned.